What are your expectations for the LA Kings this year? Because it feels like this team, we're kind of waiting for them to take that next step. Feels like the time might be right now.
Yeah, I think management's gone out and made some big moves, and you could date it back to 2 years ago with the Kevin Fiala move. Now it's Pierre-Luc Dubois, and they've gotten significantly better, and they've added some star power into the mix. So I think now, Stu, it's like, it's not just making the playoffs, it's having success in the playoffs. It's winning a round, maybe 2 rounds. I think that looking at this team coming into the season, I want to think of them the same way I think of Colorado, Vegas, Edmonton, even Dallas now. At this point, I haven't, because they haven't done anything in the postseason. So if they can, they should be an elite team in the West.
I go back a little farther. They've been planning for this moment, building for this moment. We had Luc Robitaille on this broadcast a couple of summers ago, and he's talking about, bring in a piece like Arvidsson. He can stabilize the forward core, add some depth to the forward core, while these young players like a Byfield are kind of developing. I feel like we're at that moment now. To your point, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Danault, Fiala, as you mentioned, along with an Arvidsson. You've got this really talented, I think, cohesive group, core of veteran guys. But also now, look at Byfield. He's emerged into their top 6, nicely settled on a line with Kopitar and Kempe on the right side. They're kind of at that moment. This is what they've been pining for. They're there. My only cautionary point, the rest of the Pacific Division is kind of getting better at the same time. Who expected to see what we saw from Seattle?
Right.
Don't count them out of the mix.
Right.
So, you kind of want to hedge your bet by referencing the rest of the division. But I'm with you. They were right there on the cusp. They were positioned to knock Edmonton off, go on and make some noise in the postseason. I think it's going to be hard for them to add to that this year, but I think anything short of what they did last year will be a shortcoming.
When I look at the Ford group, and if we could put them up there again, because I have
how about the depth down the middle?
It's great, and it's great to the level that now you can go Quinton Byfield on the wing. But when you look at this lineup, you know what the comp is for me? And this is the same, hang with me here, the New York Rangers. And the reason why I say this is there's some good depth here, but the team taking the next step, Rangers might be at a different place as far as what they've done, but the Rangers have Lafreniere and Kakko, both getting more of an opportunity in this lineup. Young, talented players need to do more. On this roster, it's Byfield, it's Kaliev. Those guys can take a significant step. Now look at this group, right? Like, it's good right now because you know where those guys were drafted. Well, what happens now if Quinton Byfield is on that top line? He pops, and he becomes that star player. Now, all of a sudden, Stu, I'm like, this team, they might have the most depth in the Western Conference. So I think that, just like the Rangers, it's time now for the young players to take the step, and I think that's where we'll see the team taking the biggest step.
Couple of other cautionary points that relate to a pair of veteran guys, and it's the fact that they're veteran guys. Remember, Kopitar, marvelous year last year, 74 points, I think. Go back 3 years in time, that's 50 years. Doughty, what's he got left in him? These two players, they're impactful. They've contributed significantly, even at a later stage in their career. But let's be clear, at some point, their cheating father time, it's a diminishing return you're going to get from these two guys, depending on how they fare. That's something to kind of keep an eye on as well.
What would be the biggest question mark you have for the LA Kings entering this year?
Well, we just saw their D-core there. I think Gavrikov having a full season there is going to be more comfortable. Brant Clark is a highly regarded younger defenseman. I think that if he's ready to take that next step too, this has been kind of the question mark for me for a while. It's been in goal. Like, what are we going to exactly get? What are they going to? I mean, they've had a really good story. Phoenix Copley's been awesome.
Last year.
Big save Dave's there. Cam Talbot seems to be motivated here to bounce back from last season. And I guess if it's by committee, just like Vegas did, then they should be fine. But if there's a weakness, I'd have to say it's probably with their goaltending.
Yeah, I think that remains for me probably the biggest question mark. And on the other side of the ledger, if Copley and Talbot end up being a Swayman-Lindmark kind of a tandem and exceed our expectations. On the other side, they could paper over some of the problems or shortcomings that we're talking about if those materialize, and they may not materialize.
And that's the point here, too. And I think that we're starting to see that, and Vegas brought it up. I mean, we've seen that maybe even in some regards with Carolina, with having multiple goaltenders having success. When you play the right way in front of an NHL goaltender, they're going to thrive. Yeah. So we saw Vegas do it. won a Stanley Cup.
Yep.
All right, Boston, you mentioned Boston. Those two goaltenders had success. They play the right way in front of those goaltenders. It kind of shelters their goaltenders a little bit. That's what LA. You have to play the right way. If they play the right way and insulate those goaltenders, they should thrive.
Best case, best example of the point you're making, think about the year Jersey had and how responsible those guys played in front of what was a mediocre goaltending tandem, and they had a brilliant year. I mean, set aside the Boston Bruins, who had a more remarkable year-to-year improvement than Jersey last year.